Hi, I'm John Cuddeback.
And I'm Sofia Cuddeback.
If you're wondering whether you can really be friends with your spouse
and raise children into responsible adults with whom you have a relationship,
and do what it takes to make a homestead, reconnecting with your body and the land wherever you live.
If you just want to think more about how to make a truly happy home in our trying times,
then The Intentional Household, a LifeCraft podcast, is for you. Join us. Welcome, everybody. It's great to be here again with my wife, Sofia, for this episode called 5 Ideas to Make It a Household Christmas. So this is going to be kind of an in-the-weeds, brass tacks. How can we think about making this Christmas, our celebration of it, better? How can we make it richer, deeper? And how can we have it be more fruit of the household itself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of the principles here that I think that's going to be behind it, and again, we're going to jump right into this list of 5 here that Sofia and I sat down and made together. And we include a lot of examples of what we do in our home over the years. But one of the principles here is a household, while it's never completely self-sufficient, it should be characterized by a kind of self-sufficiency or reasonable self-sufficiency, where it's like a kind of dynamo of power, of life, where it's able to kind of bring forth, give birth to work and leisure, the main different aspects of life. That the household is kind of the natural place that these things arise from, where traditions are formed and passed on. And I think one of the features, particularly of our day, is that our homes have become more a place of kind of consumption versus production. They're more passive as opposed to active. And so how we celebrate Christmas very often ends up being more a function of what's kind of being given to us, foisted upon us, seen going on around us. Here's how you're going to decorate. Mm-hmm. Here's what you're going to watch on the television. Here's what we're going to be giving one another for gifts, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're such a image driven. It's funny because the image is, you need an image in your mind to move forward. But because we have so many images constantly bombarding us through technology, I think that we have an image in our mind of the image that's presented by the world of what's a happy Christmas. And so I think sometimes unconsciously it kind of takes over and we just think, oh, that's what we're supposed to do. And it's not that those images are necessarily bad, but they are very, very small part of what should be a very rich Christmas. And so, but if we're not careful, then we just think that's the entirety of what we should be pursuing. And then all of a sudden we kind of end up having an empty Christmas that looks exactly like what we've just seen in advertisement and things like that. And so this is kind of just in hopes of trying to recreate something that is more rich and more particular to our household. And it's also by way of an encouragement that you can come up with something original because you're original. Your household celebration of Christmas is going to kind of look different from your next door neighbors because you're a different kind of family. But there are certain principles, of course, that are very much in common. So let's talk about some of these.
Even if it's original, it might as well be very traditional. But kind of part of the interesting thing is, I think today there's been this kind of flattening, particularly to a kind of consumerist and society and practices, and how the kind of all-pervasive advertising tends to flatten. Here's what it looks like, feels like, sounds like, smells like, tastes like, and which actually has made us lose a number of our richer traditions.
Sure.
Part of that flattening is it probably we're over busy and kind of, well, don't worry about, those things. Often those traditions took a little more time, took a little more effort. And well, what we're going to talk about here is going to take a little bit of effort. We might say intentionality. Really, in a sense, this is 5 ideas to make it a more intentional household Christmas.
Sure.
Because Christmas is worth celebrating in that rich kind of way. I mean, really, isn't it in many ways the most wonderful time of the year? It's the most special time. It isn't for many of us our childhood memories. It can sound kind of corny, but there's something to this making memories things. Not that we necessarily go into it, well, now we're going to start making the memories, but there is a truth to if we're intentional about this, this is the kind of thing that really forms the imagination, gives them a sense of who they are, what their household life is like together. This is the most special time really to be together. It fits that it's winter. At least those of us in the northern hemisphere,
Yeah.
it's winter, and that's going to kind of add to that coziness and coming together. So right, all right. Well, let's jump in here. Here's the list of 5. I'm going to say it, and then we'll just kind of go through each of them. 1, do food traditions together. 2, read or listen to Christmas stories. 3, do family games of some sort. 4, sing Christmas carols. And 5, enact spiritual practices, particularly spiritual customs. But that might mean coming up with some new ones. So back to the first one, do food traditions together. So much of human life kind of begins and revolves around, if I want to say centers around, but is done in the context
Takes place around
of our eating.
Yeah.
That's part of the gift of being human, right? Angels don't eat. They just don't. We do several times a day. And that's why every celebration that we have is ultimately, if it has any significance, is going to be associated with food. And so let's look again. Let's ask ourselves, what can we reasonably do to enrich our Christmas celebration through how we're going to do food? And for many of us, I think that's, rediscovering certain traditions, making that choice of, maybe we have to dust one off. Is it get out grandma's recipe? Is it that grandma's actually still around? And it can be, let's prioritize asking grandma to make that recipe and make clear, because she is probably wondering whether anybody cares. If we haven't kind of come forward and said, hey, this is a very important part of our celebration. Can you do that? Get one of the grandchildren involved, one of the children involved in making that together? Or is it now maybe grandma's not around, but we have grandma's recipe and we invite a teenager to get in and start to do that? What do you think, dear?
Yeah, I just have found that historically in our family, the children love to participate in preparing special foods for Christmas, whether they're tiny children or teenage kids. It's, as the kids got older, everybody would say, oh, I'm going to make this year. Oh yeah, and I'll take care of this. And so it's just a great way of them feeling like they're participating in the family community of festivity at Christmas time. Another thing I'll say is that I'm always surprised. There are all kinds of things that I do for Christmas that we do every year. And some of them are my favorite thing, and other of them are not so much. I do them because it's what's been handed down to us. And so it's always interesting to me when I'm getting the Christmas food ready. One of the children will volunteer, oh, are we making such and such? That's my favorite. And sometimes it catches me by surprise because it's not my favorite. And I wouldn't have necessarily known, in the previous years, they're just enjoying it and not kind of enunciating, this is my favorite. Or maybe it's kind of a new realization on their part that after X amount of years, they realize, wow, I realize I've been waiting for this all year. And so it's kind of a fun time to also draw your children out. What is your favorite dish? If you've been celebrating a lot of Christmases, you've probably accumulated a lot of traditions, and there might be, as the mom, you're going, oh, I wonder which one we can leave out this year. It's always good to just ask everyone who's coming to the table, what is your favorite? Maybe you can accommodate their desire and do it. Maybe you can't, but it's really a wonderful revelation of the people who will come together around the table to know, well, what is their favorite?
Right.
Sometimes it catches me by surprise.
I love that. And I think here is good to note right off the bat, and we'll see this really in each of the 5 ideas, is kind of the overarching principle of a kind of ritual and a kind of consistency in it. And I mean, you can throw in the word tradition there. It's just, again, not in a rigid way, not in a way that things can never change, but it's interesting how, again, particularly for young children, this can be kind of a gift. Something can become a, quote, tradition for them very quickly. Well, isn't this when we always such and such? I noticed that was always the case when the children are younger. And they really have, it clearly gives them a sense of security. That's one of the great things in Belloc's essay about the traditions of Christmas. that by kind of carrying them on and having a consistency to how we observe these holy days, that points to a kind of consistency in human life, and even maybe a way of kind of proclaiming there's a root meaning to our celebration of Christmas that endures and calls forth these traditions in a kind of ritual consistency, because they've been found to be fitting ways that
Mm-hmm.
we mark this time, that we set this time apart,
Mm-hmm.
that we signify to ourselves and to all those around us that um, this is a time where remembering something is one of the most important things in life. One of the things that gives direction to our life. So I think it's important, and this kind of goes without saying, that why is it important to make it a household Christmas? Because of how important Christmas is, and making it a certain kind of household Christmas here is a way of kind of bringing that meaning in an all more important, all more rich way to kind of imbue this time, and through that the whole rest of the year.
Yeah. And I wonder if part of the reason it's important to do the same things is because every year at Christmas, we celebrate the same thing, which is the coming of Christ, which in a certain sense, it's not just mindlessly repeating it. We repeat it because it's something that persists and is present in eternity.
Amen.
And
Amen.
so maybe that's why it's particularly, we want to do certain things over and over again at Christmas that are the same as we did it last year and the year before and the year before and in the generation before, because it's kind of signifies that eternal presence of the reality of the coming of the
Yeah.
Savior.
Yeah, it just came to my mind when you just said that. I mean, the notion memory is so important. I think in all of the by being a ritual, consistency, tradition, it helps us with memory. In the Ukrainian tradition, when one of the ways that you remember the dead and pray for the dead is you say Vichnaya Pamyat, may your
Eternal memory.
memory be eternal. And Belloc points out how there's a presence of the people in our lives who have now gone on. That presence remains through the traditions that we continue to celebrate. And already here, something as simple as mentioning, quote, grandma's recipe. I mean, there's certain things, certain dishes, ways that we eat them that will always remind me of the people from whom we learned these things.
Yeah.
Now, if not everyone has that they can look back on, well, then let's look forward, and
And
we
make a
can
new
do
one.
that for our
Absolutely.
children, and that will be a way that we will be with them later.
Yeah.
Little things have great significance, particularly when we see the deeper significance in life and the connection of, say, the meaning of Christmas and its enduring importance. That's the reason that we want to do these ideas. That's the reason that, say, as spouses, we're going to ask ourselves, how can we make it a better Christmas? How can we be more intentional in how we celebrate it and make it be more memorable and indeed more enjoyable
Yeah.
for everyone?
Yeah, because it's meaningful. One other thing I would add to the doing food traditions together, it's a little bit dipping into number 5, which is enacting spiritual practices. But you mentioned the word ritual over and over again when you were talking about consistency and these food traditions that we do. It really strikes me that sitting down together at the Christmas Eve dinner table, having the ritual of prayer, of a prayer that's separate and set apart, other than just prayer over meals, that sets apart this evening, is a very important part of the ritual, whether it's, Christmas Day brunch that we're having, or Christmas dinner, or Christmas Eve dinner. I think that that kind of solidifying it as a ritual meal by the offering of a particular prayer. Our Ukrainian tradition that we do is that we have a little plate that has very small pieces of bread that are all taken from the same loaf. Traditionally, this would have been prosvora, which is blessed bread that's blessed at the liturgy and then brought home. But many times we haven't had access to that. And so we cut small slices out of a single loaf of bread, signifying the unity that we are one that we are all many but one. And then we cut them into small pieces, the bread in small pieces, and we put honey on it, which is signifying Christ, the sweetness of life, has come and visited us today. And the bread is also symbolic of Christ being the bread of life. And then the father of the head of the family takes that little piece of bread. There are enough pieces of bread as there are people on the table and one extra for the unexpected guest. And so the head of the family goes to each member of the family before we start our feast and wishes them a special Christmas blessing into the new year. So it's just it's a way of making Christ central and making the feast have this particular meaning in it that's a beautiful ritual.
Oh, Jim, I'm very glad you shared that. Because honestly, that is probably my single favorite, most powerful and meaningful to me ritual that we do anytime in the entire year. And it so happens for me that that includes having come into your family as a son-in-law and thus having your father do that, and he going around and giving me for the first time the piece when I was taking part in the meal with your family, and now with his being gone, that now I do the same thing that was done for me already for me in my adult life. This is such an incredibly profound thing that has so many beautiful aspects, including the way, and your mother would get involved, that they would thank God for your presence in their life, especially this year. Wish you many blessings in the new year, and go around to each person. And they taught me to do that. And so now going around to each person and just saying, it's so great to have you in our life, in our home. I'm so proud how you're growing into a young man, or how, you were blessed this year with your first child. I mean, it's just, there's so many simple things. And this is something anyone could do. Prosvora in Ukrainian. I mean, if someone would, you can find that. I don't know what it would be called in English if someone just wanted to even look up. I think this is done by many Eastern cultures, but it's nothing terribly more dramatic than a piece of bread cut into the number of pieces for the people in the room, with one extra, that beautiful aspect of you never know when someone else might come, and who knows, it might even be the Christ child might show up, and then, sharing that. But variations on that, how memorable and beautiful that can be. And that's, and again, is interesting. That's not kind of a food tradition in the main sense we're talking about, but it certainly fits right with it. And it goes right at the beginning of the meal. At the
table. And before we move on, I'll just say, we mentioned it briefly, the extra piece for the unexpected guest. My family always set a place for the unexpected guest, which again, it's kind of a food tradition. It's the plate. It's a full setting at the table that's supposed to remember those from the family who have passed on and are not with us, those who are traveling can't be with us, but also to open our heart to receive those whom the Lord will send to us this year. It's a little bit remembering how Mary and Joseph knocked at the doors and were turned away. And we don't want to be one to turn away for lack of room at the table if someone comes. And 2 years in a row, this has never really happened before, but 2 years in a row, we had the unprecedented delight of someone knocking at our door in the middle of our Christmas
during
feast.
our actual Christmas,
and we had a place to welcome them at the table. For years of having the place for the unexpected guest and never having an unexpected guest, to have an unexpected guest was just absolutely
it will
supernal.
go down in the annals. and it just, I note that note how these traditions can have the fruit that they're supposed to have, that we had the place set, and that somebody knocked at the door,
and we were ready.
Everyone had this sense of,
Here he is.
quick, come in. Don't let that guy go. Get him over here. Sit him down. Look, we've got a plate for you.
Yeah.
And it gives a whole new spirit of, like you say, of kind of openness and generosity, by there being that visible, kind of almost stark and notable empty plate at maybe an otherwise crowded table. What an incredible, I loved that. I've never seen that before. Your family, I absolutely love that. All right, so number 2, read or listen to Christmas stories. I would just say straight off, reading together especially at Christmas. It's my favorite time to do as a family. But reading together is probably the single most obvious, powerful, simple, beautiful way that we come together and be in one of those presents as a family. I don't know how else to put it, that if I just kind of want to, I mean, this to me applies on Sundays. It applies on certain just evenings of the week. It's good to have a little, when possible, a little corner of Sunday, not just on Sunday, but even throughout the week. But here, particularly at Christmas time, which in a sense, probably is a kind of large Sunday. We should note how Christmas hopefully will be celebrated over a number of days, and hopefully we're able to, if we can, arrange our taking off of work and being together and prioritizing celebrating over the course of several days in some form or fashion, or maybe if to go right back to work, maybe it's then on the 8th day or the 12th day that we circle back. But if there's kind of one image other than being all around the table together, it's being in the living room around the hearth, whether the fire is lit or not, and reading out loud together.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to do. Reading out loud together, and especially in a family setting, can be challenging because you have different ages. And this is part of the reason I particularly love reading Christmas stories out loud together, because in general, the format, the way they're told, they're completely intelligible for very young. It's a story that has a very simple progression, and the very young can understand it. And they usually draw really strong images for them, so they understand them. But the nature of the Christmas spirit is such that even a simple story has the complexity of gift, receiving, mystery, surprised by joy. And so I find that Christmas stories in particular are really a great way to be able to do something that all ages can really appreciate together at the same time. And I'll say that if you're at a loss where to find Christmas stories, please do avail yourself of our resource on our website, where we have a list of, we've over many years discovered so many wonderful Christmas stories that we've enjoyed over and over again. And we'd love for you to have an experience of them too. So they're all on the website. And I'm going to make a particular plug for a book by Rebecca Cottle named A Certain Small Shepherd. And it's illustrated by William Penn Dubois. And it's very important to have his illustrations in the unfolding of the story. There's something that's unspoken in the story that becomes clear in the illustrations. It probably takes about an hour to read out loud, so it's not a very quick read, but because it has pictures, even the young can often be willing to sit through it because you're turning the pages and they're seeing the pictures. It's my absolute favorite Christmas story.
A Certain Small Shepherd.
A Certain Small Shepherd by Rebecca Cottle, illustrated by William Penn Dubois.
And there's lots, thank you, dear. There's lots of other kind of, there's a variety.
Yeah.
There's ones
Ethnic
that are very short, that the smallest children can be involved in. Maybe it's a picture one, and then everyone else can be kind of listening, but then maybe somebody has the smallest children on the lap reading this out loud. But hey, everyone else gather around and listen. And listen to the story. You don't necessarily have to see the images in most
other than this one. And part of the thing that I love about that too, especially in the days that come after Christmas Day, that during the celebrating of the 12 days of Christmas, is that very often people have things that they've received for Christmas that they would like to enjoy. And if enjoying them means going to their own room or doing their own thing, it can be an isolating thing for someone to do the things or use the things that they got for Christmas. Whereas when we're reading out loud, it gives an opportunity for people to bring handwork, a coloring book they got, sewing or something like that, where people are enjoying the things that are very particular. Sketchbook, and coloring for very young children is a really fun way for them to be doing something while they're listening. So it ends up just covering a lot of needs and creating a lot of this oasis of peaceful, restful, joyous togetherness. Togetherness. I don't think that's a real word. Anyway, very together.
Yeah. I'll just mention at the other end of the spectrum that doesn't work so well with small children. Sometimes we have to be willing to give it a try, and maybe the small child or children kind of fall asleep, or they're able to be doing their coloring. Sometimes let's not underestimate giving it a chance. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I mean, having a family household is always an exercise in, calling audibles and respond to the situation as it is.
Yeah.
But something like reading out loud A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens is kind of incomparable.
Yeah,
I mean, the Christmas Carol is just such a profound, beautiful, moving, particularly the full version, which would take a couple hours because it's like 70 pages or so.
Maybe
but
you could do it over a couple days.
There are abbreviated versions of A Christmas Carol that can be read out loud. That's and that might be exactly what fits. Cricket on the Hearth is not quite as accessible. But it's a very powerful one.
Yeah.
But we mentioned here also listening and not necessarily reading. We have recorded at Spotify a number of our favorite stories that are kind of for the whole family, not super long, really beautiful. And so we've shared those, and that might give you some ideas. And there's nothing wrong with, we sometimes love just putting on a good recording. Another favorite of ours is Winter Cherries
by Odds
Bodkin. That we love just putting that on and listening to it. And so you could do the same thing with some of the stories that we've recorded. Obviously, there's lots of others out there. So, if it's a little bit more daunting to have someone read, that might, that's another thing that can be done. It may be something that gets you ready and starts to, prime the pump or lead you into being able to read it out loud. Just throw out if the parents are both interested and involved, if mom and dad say, hey, let's gather around, folks. Let's read a story. Let's listen to a story.
Yep.
It's going to happen, and it's going to be enjoyable.
There's a little bit of a rumpus, and something needs to be smoothed over. Don't give up. Just smooth it over and move on. And the children love it.
Speaking of a rumpus and children loving it, our next number 3 is do family games of some sort. All right, so here we're going to start with the kind of full-on kind of games. And I know there's some people that will say, we don't like games or anything that has a winner or is competitive. We'll have a couple ideas then for that too. But we're a gaming family, and who knows? You might be more of a gaming family than you realize. If you haven't kind of leaned into it, again, especially get both parents involved in there, and you crack out. Here's a favorite of ours. We absolutely love this game. It's called Wits and Wagers.
It's a box game.
It's a box game, but it's minimal setup. All ages can get involved. Very simple. You can learn it very quickly. It's kind of a trivia-ish kind of thing, but not one that is super taxing. We just find it's well designed and works well. We're not going to kill you with the details here. Other favorites of ours, categories. We've done that for years and years. We had a tri-bond kind of run there for a while. Haven't done that for a little while. I mean, there's all kinds of ones that aren't kind of the boxed games. There's the ones like charades, which is another family favorite. 20 questions. We have one that's called the clapping game, where you sit in a circle and you go around and everyone claps to a rhythm, and each next person adds a new word to the sentence. All in kind of age appropriate ways. These can be very.
I Spy is perfect with a Christmas tree in the room.
Now that and there you're going to something that's not competitive. It's simply, again, if there's people that get over competitive, all right, then drop out. You can do charades in a non-competitive way, where it's just, okay, we're gonna here's some book titles, here's some movie titles. Let's just have people successfully get up and act it out, and have everybody guess. I remember one time with a number of young children in the room, we just did animal charades. And the astounding fun that they had just by each child being called up in turn and whispering the name of an animal in their ear and saying, okay, what does that, you just go and you act like that animal. And it can be uproariously funny. Yeah. And, everybody's involved. Okay, here, grandma, you do one, kind of thing. So, I mean, that's the dumbed down version of charades kind of for everybody. But maybe you do that for half an hour or something. I mean, people are laughing, they're together. It's something that has welled up from within.
Yeah, a joy that
People are
bubbles
not
up.
looking at their phones. People are not being siphoned off to go
Their
do
individual
whatever.
stuff.
We're just
Yeah.
I mean, small blessings to be grateful for and to cultivate.
Mm-hmm.
These games, these simple things, again, we're bodily present. We're looking at one another. And yeah, I grant sometimes that competitive aspect has to be managed, but sometimes the competitive aspect is an important thing to be able to work through and people to be able to learn how to handle that. Each family is going to find their own way.
Yeah, and we just mentioned, we said, oh, for the children, for the children, for the children. It might seem like we're saying, oh, if you have children in the house, play games. But actually, I think there's really a precedent for playing games at Christmas time. I mean, think of in the Christmas Carol at Fezziwig's party, they're playing blind man's bluff. The adults are.
Yes, that's a great point.
So it's
Yep.
there is something that is just inexorably
Oh,
connected
it's not
to.
Fezziwigs. That's his son, his nephews. I think.
Oh, at his nephews.
Sorry to be
Okay.
corrective. That
No,
didn't,
that's
that didn't
perfect.
matter. But
Fezziwig, they were
Fezziwigs,
dancing.
they're dancing, which
Yes,
is lovely.
which is great too.
Maybe
That we had the
maybe this should be on the
ability
list.
to do that
Number
too.
6, have a Christmas dance.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Fezziwig. Okay, sorry.
Sounds good to me. So anyway, I was just going to say that it's not just for kids. I think that it's a wonderful thing for adults to do too at Christmas time.
And maybe something outdoor. I mean, from often the weather's not going to be fitting for that. But I mean, we could put in in this category of something that's kind of a more playful way of being together. Is it going outside and throwing a ball if we happen to get a good sunny day? We can throw in going for a walk.
Uh-huh.
It's not a we don't have going for a walk together as a separate thing on the list, so we can toss that in,
Perfect.
sneak it in, squeeze it in under number 3.
Yeah.
But okay, let's go on to number 4. Sing Christmas carols. Well, I mean, we can do it. You can do it. If right now you're thinking, oh boy, I just say, don't think, oh boy. Think, here we go.
Yeah.
Giddy up. It's all in your attitude. If you say you can't sing, then sure enough, you can't sing.
Mm-hmm.
If you say you can sing, you can sing.
And even if you struggle with singing, then Christmas carols is the place to start. Because historically, Christmas carols was a way for a non-liturgical, outside of the church way of celebrating the feast of Christmas. And most often they were designed to be short, repetitive tunes that are usually set to a dance rhythm. So they're super catchy, they're super fun. Their melody line is very limited, and the words are just extraordinarily didactic. Not in a bad sense. That sounds bad, but instructive,
the word means teaching.
illustrative.
Yes.
They're
Yes.
they illustrate, and so I want to recommend. Well, first of all, just want to also direct you to our resource on our online. If you're overwhelmed and don't know anything other than the 2 or 3 standard Christmas carols that are sung in your church, we've put together a Christmas resource on our website, which is a downloadable Christmas carol book. You can just print out the pages, fold it over, and you have your own carol book that has all the words to the carols in it. I think there's like 12 carols or something, so not super overwhelming.
They tend to be the ones you already know, most of them.
And some of them are a little bit different. I wanted to stretch you a little bit to some beautiful ones that we should know, and it's a shame we don't anymore. And then I also just put down some tracks singing each of those carols. So if you want to practice them singing along with me, if you don't know the tune, it's not familiar, they're right there. It's not listening music. It's music just for you to sing along with, to get to know and feel comfortable to sing them on your own in your house.
Some people have actually enjoyed just listening to it. But really, it's, I mean, we've actually done a whole different episode on the singing in the home and what a beautiful part of home life that can be. And here, singing at Christmas is the natural place to start, or to take the next step. It's just, it's the best opportunity we have, that a number of people will already know the tunes. And if it's the case that the young people, and you hear tell of this, that even kind of more common Christmas carols, some of the young people haven't heard. Yeah, we need to do something about that. I mean, this is just really important. Yeah. And if we have to even listen together to those tracks that you put down, or find them online, find them wherever, and we have our favorite albums,
Mm-hmm.
John Rutter and
And Cambridge singers. Yeah.
that we listen to, and of course that helps teach them. But then we don't want to just listen; we want to get together and sing. It's a beautiful. This also has that spiritual aspect. It has that ritual aspect. It has and here's my favorite. Oh, what's your favorite?
And it's got the
people
joy aspect.
like to jump in and okay, I really love this one.
Yeah.
And the reason it's good to remind ourselves of the words, and that's why sometimes we all will need the book to remember some, maybe when it gets to the second or third or the fourth verse.
Yeah.
They really are beautiful.
Yeah.
So many
really
of them are just
sing more than one verse.
Interestingly, sometimes the words are about kind of the birth itself and the story of that, but very often they're also about kind of, good King Wenceslas looking out on the Feast of Stephen, the different things that are about kind of how Christmas has been celebrated through the years. And it's inspiring, it's encouraging to be singing these songs kind of about how people joyfully celebrate, in the sense you are jumping in and joyfully celebrating with them by singing these words about how they celebrate.
They're so great. They're just amazing. I could sing Christmas carols all year round.
That's the one I'm thinking of about the bowl, the drink,
wassail.
And the wassail. Right?
Here we come wassailing.
And so it's about caroling, but it's an incredibly fun carol about caroling.
Yeah.
And so in any case, again, it's a way of taking the meaning and kind of putting it more into our bones, into our body, by singing these words out loud. Again, if parents take the lead, there's so much. I'm going to call us all up, grandparents, aunt and uncle. If the adults will have a sense of, hey, I don't have to sing perfectly, but Christmas, if at any time, this is one I sing, and come and join me. And there's no judging. It doesn't matter whether you're on key or you've forgotten the words or you're listening and trying to catch up. We're all in this together. And that this is part of the beautiful spirit of Christmas that brings us together. And it should be so characteristic of the kind of household that we want to have. Here's a safe place to sing. Here's a place where we want to sing together. Here's a place that we encourage one another to sing about the things that give meaning to our life. Small things have great significance, particularly when we see them that way and are intentional and invest in them. Well, we're already to our fifth, which we've been kind of alluding to, of enacting spiritual practices. And again, maybe you already have the customs of that. These will overlap with the others, right? There can be a beautiful spiritual aspect of the singing. There can be a spiritual aspect, of course, of the stories that we're telling. And Sophia already mentioned. You mentioned, dear, the spiritual aspect that can go with the food traditions. But we just we'll share a few of our spiritual ones. One is just when we all sit down around the tree before we open our gifts, we just read from St. Luke's Gospel the Nativity narrative, and just let's all gather around, and let's just take a few minutes right now. And we're just gonna read it. We're gonna read it out loud. We're gonna read it slowly. It's not too slowly, but I mean, something we might do then is just kind of pause and say, did anything strike anybody? Or we could say before we read it out loud, just so you know, after we've read it, I'm going to ask, is there anything that stood out to you that you just want to share? And maybe kind of have an adult ready to kind of lead the way. Make it be very comfortable. It doesn't have to be some profound, I love how the shepherds are referred to as blah, or I love how we hear angels actually sing. I wonder how an angel sings, even though it doesn't have a body. Just whatever it is that we just note these things. Frankly, that is a beautiful practice that can be carried throughout the year of a deeper kind of interaction with and entering into sacred scripture. And here again is a place that's kind of easier to do that. Christmas lends itself to that than just
Story is
other
so
times
accessible.
throughout the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, hey, it's almost like the baby steps, for so many of the kinds of things we want to do in our household. Christmas is like the easier context, the baby steps, the thing that is already kind of custom made to help us be able to do these things. What other spiritual practices?
Well, we talked a little bit about asking those who are sitting with us at the table, listening to the gospel narrative, what's your impression? Another way that kind of we can enter into the gospel story is to ask children to act out. And this is a little bit kind of the game, also can be part of the game, but can we act out one of the narratives? It's like, the nativity play, but, writ small. So in the family, can we act that out? What would it look like if, or something like that? Another thing that I think falls into the category of kind of focusing on the religious aspect without being technically a prayer is lighting the candles around the creche set. So, or even lighting the candles at the table. Children love to light candles. And when we have a ceremonious moment in which we light the candles around the creche set, it draws all of our attention to the creche set and to the child in the manger. And it sounds like a silly thing, but blowing out the candles too is kind of this moment of concluding or darkness covering. And it's a really beautiful way of drawing all of our attention, but especially children love to be a part of that.
Isn't it funny? It's just, they really love it. Simple things. And again, we can invest these. This is where children need to be drawn into this, not total stop it. No, it's not. No, I'm going to light the candles.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great opportunity to empower them, to give them, it gives them such joy. Oh, of course, please come light the candle. Or there's the other related tradition that we have of the Christ child. The figure of the baby is not in the manger,
it's not attached to the manger
until Christmas Eve. And so the tradition of the youngest child, who is mobile in any case, not an infant, is the one who takes it and places it in. And this is not to be underestimated.
Such a ceremonious
the small
moment.
Child who gets to do that. How often is the youngest child kind of called upon in a public way? I mean, it's interesting. This is a beginning of teaching a child it's okay when all attention is turned towards you. You know how, like, hey, I'm a teacher in the classroom. Very often students really dislike being called upon. We feel put on the spot if kind of attention is turned towards us. There's some more theatrical people, but in general, that's something that people have to get used to. This is a life lesson. This is okay, so and so. This is, and everyone else kind of stops and looks on, but looks on in a loving, gentle, approving way. Oh, so and so's going to go put in the Christ child. And then maybe it's okay. Other children come, and now we're gonna light these candles. Is it then that we read the infancy narrative? Is it then that we sing, one of the hymns? So rich, so easy to just set aside. How much is missed for them and for us? What an incredibly important way to kind of be docile to these things that we enact together have a deeper effect on us than we know.
Yeah.
And so I think there's this kind of beautiful aspect of let's be humble and be open to how can we rediscover these ways. Anything else that we have in the spiritual one?
Well, no, but as we're wrapping up here and getting to the end, I realize there is something that's not on this list that I think we need to address.
Good.
And that's presents or gifts, the giving and receiving of gifts. And I know that sometimes it can be an overwhelming part of our household celebration where we feel completely overwhelmed by the consumerist aspect of gifts, whether it's having to think of what to get for people, getting things for people, spending the entire time opening gifts. And then, it just feels like it can become an overly large focus. And certainly it can be. We do need to be careful to have it not become a consumer Christmas. But I don't think that the answer is to say, well, we're not going to do a consumer Christmas. We're going to get rid of all of our presents. I mean, surely there can be a positive way of doing that too. But it's always been a tension for us about how to integrate the gift part in a way that is consonant with the spirit of everything else that we're doing.
But we've never been tempted to cut it out. We always knew that we were going to integrate it. It's just how to do so.
Yeah. And then asking questions, how many, and things like that. So obviously as parents, we're in a position where we can control that. And so it's a matter of prudence for us. And something that my parents shared with us when we started having children, and there was the big question of, well, is it lying to your child to say that the Christ child brought you this gift or the angel brought you this gift? And we have a tradition among Ukrainians that the Christ child or the angel brings you a gift from the Christ child. And I grew up that way. And so when we were having children, we were like, oh, can we do that too? But all of a sudden, somehow it felt terrifying to say to your children that the Christ child brought it. But the spirit that my dad explained to me behind that is that the material gifts that we receive are a tangible, more accessible way of experiencing that which is not tangible and not easily apprehended by us, which is actually a greater gift, which is the love of God, God coming as man to save us, and the constant superabundant overflowing of grace that's present to us. And so gifts, so I just wanted to suggest that. I mean, it really changed my attitude about gifts. And even in my child's enjoyment of a gift where I'm like, oh, is he getting overly obsessed with, this toy? No, those are things that joy that we experience when we receive a gift is actually native to the nature of the gift. And God is the greatest gift giver, and he's constantly giving us gifts. And so in this moment of his birth, to have that experience of, oh, I'm so happy I've received this, and then immediately followed with gratitude for, these are all a small material expression of the greater supernatural reality that's there. And so I just wanted to throw that in there as a way of,
I think that's key,
thinking about how we do gifts and how they integrate into this bigger picture of humbly kneeling at the manger and receiving the greatest gift of all.
Well, I love it. If I might just amplify and add in quickly, another thing that your father had said from the start about raising children is a child will never be spoiled if a child is grateful. And how do you cultivating gratitude? We've talked about this in other contexts. It is a profound project. And may we at least have that in our sights, how important it is that we are cultivating gratitude in the children. And one of the big ways that we can certainly cultivate it is by showing it ourselves. If we have the whole spirit of our Christmas celebration be, we are so grateful and overjoyed at the gift of life in Christ, that Christ has come to dwell among us because he loves us and wants to live with us, to share his life with us. And we love one another and want to share our lives with one another. And we share our lives with one another in Christ. Christ has made this possible. It's made it possible that the life that we share here is just the beginning of sharing life in an unending way. Gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. It's all about God's giftly initiative towards us and our receiving it. And this is at the center of life. And so I have always, by the grace of God, I've been even a great example of that, dear. And I think that we have a practice of it's just this point. It's not like passed on by rule. It's just passed on by example. As when you get that gift, you turn to the one who gave it to you, and there's just that sense of thank you so much. You experience the person's love in that gift. We all know, so very often, especially children, and almost at times enjoy giving one more. They feel so special that they're able to do that, and they love to be thanked. So just when we're really just having the whole thing be a spirit of we are so blessed, we are so grateful. We are so blessed, we are so grateful. That's not the consumerist approach. That's not the, darn it, I didn't get the latest edition of this video game, right? It just doesn't fit with the, we are so blessed, we are so grateful. But getting some, whatever it is, gift that the child really wanted to have, that can fit very well with, oh my goodness, I'm so grateful to my parents. So in case we just are in the zone and we're thinking about how can we become more grateful, how can we exemplify gratitude, how can we try to arrange things in our celebration of Christmas to bring out gratitude from end to end, I think the gift giving is going to be a beautiful part of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, there was our list of 5 with a little extra thought there on giving gifts. We are very glad to have been able to spend a little time with you here, and may God bless your Christmas celebrations and your home throughout the whole year. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in this episode of The Intentional Household. If you've enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and leave a rating or review. If you have any topic requests, please send them to lifecraftgroup@gmail.com. For our Wednesday reflections, free courses, reading groups, and live events, please visit life-craft.org.